Welcome to part 2 of my Android native development crash course. We're going to pick up from where we left off last time and start specifying our activities in our Android manifest XML and create our application class, etc. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is actually create our new activity, so our main activity. So we can change our view here to project. You can use whatever you want. I'm just going to use the project view for now. And inside of main Java, inside of that package, you'll see that I've got my kind of root package there, com, bear, drizzleheim. And of course you can create sub packages within this as you see fit. I'm just going to create a Kotlin class right in here, directly inside of this, and I'm going to call it main activity. So that's what I'm doing right now. Okay, there we have it. And yeah, I'm going to specify it as a class. Okay. So let me actually quickly show you. There's another way you can do this. So you could have gone to new and then activity and then select from there what activity you want. There we go. So new basic activity, empty activity, etc. There are a bunch of different ones you can choose from. So that's another possibility, but I'm just going to create, because I've already got the code for this, I'm just going to create a new main activity class and not use one of the predefined templates, but you could do that. Okay, so inside of this class, I'm going to just pop in what I already have. So we're creating main activity which extends app compact activity, and don't worry about all the errors for now, we'll work through them. So don't worry about this commented out stuff, that's for navigation, which we'll go through later. So I'm gonna also be using data binding, so you'll see I'm specifying some of that stuff already, and we'll go through that in more detail later as well. But basically what you want to do is you want to override the onCreate function, and from app compact activity, that's where the base class where the method comes from. And you'll see that I'm using something in here as well called Timber, and Timber is just a really nice library for logging in Android. So it doesn't come standard with Android, but it's very commonly used. And as part of this video, I'm going to show you how to add your first new dependency, which will be Timber. And then we'll also be creating an application class where you actually sort of set up Timber for use. It's for like you do a lot of once-off things inside of application class, like once-off kind of instantiations and initializations. Okay, so that's what Timber is about, and we'll get to that in a sec. So let's go inside our app build.gradle, and this is where we'll actually add our dependency for Timber. So inside of the dependencies block at the bottom, we just add this implementation, and I've created I will shortly create a version Timber variable inside of our other build.gradle. So that's the project level one. So let's we'll go to that quickly. So there it is, that one. Okay, and inside of here we are going to now sort of create multiple of these variables. So we already had the Kotlin version one. Now I'm going to create a version.timber, and I'm just going to use consistent quotes. You could use either, it's not a big deal. Okay, whether you use single or double quotes, it's not really an issue. Okay, and then you could see, so I've already got the Kotlin version one, and I've added the version Timber, and it's going to ask me to sync, because every time you change something in any of your Gradle files, it needs to pull down those new dependencies. So that's what the sync did there quickly. Okay, and there we have it. If you go back into main activity.kt, you'll see that this line where we're using Timber is no longer red, because it's working now. So it's not fully working yet. We now have this included with this library, but there's still some more stuff we need to do before we'll actually be able to use Timber. We've got some areas to work through. Okay, and I'm just showing you here that you also can override like the kind of lifecycle methods inside here, so on start, on resume, etc. I'm not doing anything overly useful in all of these. You can see on start, on resume, on pause, on destroy, on restart, and on stop. I'm just doing some login basically, and calling the super version of that method, which is the original from app compact activity, the base class. Yeah, so there's just some Timber logging there. So if you ran that once we have Timber working, you'd see as it goes through the different phases in the life cycle, starting and resuming and pausing, etc., you get an appropriate login message being displayed to log cat. Right, so next up we're going to create our application class, and in our case I'm going to call mine just drizzleheim application. And this is a great place to include sort of once-off instantiations or initializations. In our case, we needed to initialize Timber, so we are going to be using Timber like in our main activity, for example, to get better logging. And it's a really cool library to use for that kind of stuff, and we've already included it as a dependency, but now we can't actually use it until we've initialized it. So we create our application class that extends from the base Android.app.application class. So this is not actually part of Android X, it's part of the standard Android stuff. And we're going to override the onCreate method, and of course as usual we start off with super.onCreate, so all the stuff specified in the original kind of base method executes, and then timber.plant is effectively our initialization call for Timber. So that's going to get us where we need to go in terms of being able to actually use Timber for logging. So there it is over there, timber.plant, timber.debug tree. Okay, now that we have created that application class, we need to specify that we have an application class and what it's called. And that kind of thing is always done inside of your Android manifest XML. So we already have an application tag. We're just going to add Android name, and this is actually the name of the application class. This is what it's referring to because it's inside the application tag, and there we specify .drizzleheim application, right, which is the class we just created. So that's going to get us where we need to be in terms of using our application class, and in our case currently just initializing Timber. Now if we look back at our main activity.xml, forget about the red stuff around data bounding for now, we'll get back to that in a future part of this thing. We need to also specify our activity, our main activity inside Android XML, similar to how we did our application. But now we actually have to put this inside of the application tag. So we've got to expand it and put this activity tag in there and specify the name as main activity. And inside of the activity tag, we would have an intent filter tag, and we'll, at a later stage, cover intents. You don't need to know about that for now. Suffice to say that inside that intent filter, you need a main action and a launcher category. Alright, so next up, it's time for us to actually create an XML file for the layout of our main activity. So the way these things generally work is you have like your Java or your Kotlin class, and you have an associated XML file that defines the layout. So I've created a new resource directory called layout inside of res, and then inside of that layout directory I'm now creating an activity_main.xml, and that maps to main activity, the Kotlin class. Okay. So if we have a look inside that XML, there's two views. There's the design view, which is kind of like a drag and drop GUI kind of feel, or you can use the text view where you can modify the XML directly. I'll go through the design views and that in separate videos. For now, we are going to focus more on the text views. See the design view, it's got all the different widgets. You can search for them, you can pull them across. It's very useful, very nice, and definitely worth using. But since I already have some existing code, for me it's going to be quicker for the crash course to just pop it straight into XML. Okay, so you can see there's a bunch of red stuff now, like for draw layouts and whatnot, and we'll include that stuff shortly. We'll add some new dependencies, but I just want to show you. So we've added what I've added here. I've added like an action bar from the material components, and I'll show you how to include the material libraries shortly. I've got an image view which will just show at the top, like on the kind of top header action bar thing, and I've specified we're going to be using fragments going forward. So one of the things I've specified already is the main nav host fragment, and yeah, and I'll go through all this stuff a bit more, like what a nav graph is and all those kinds of things, in more kind of detailed navigation videos later on. But just again, for the crash course, just including this main nav host fragment at this stage is useful, even though we won't have implement our navigation until we've got at least 2 kind of different fragments that we're going to navigate between. And I also included the navigation view for now, all of this stuff inside of a draw layout, and within that there's a linear layout. So there's all the different standard layouts you can use. I'm going to be, for the various videos I'm going to be putting together, I'm going to be using these sorts of things, as well as constraint layouts and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so inside here we now have 2 new dependencies we're going to add. So firstly, we're going to add the variables for their versions. So for our material library, so you can have a look at the material IO site, and I'll definitely have separate videos on material. For now, we're just going to include it as a dependency, as well as navigation. And as I said as well, I'll have separate videos for navigation stuff. Then inside of our, that was inside of our project build.gradle. Now inside of our app build.gradle, we are going to actually specify the navigation dependencies, and we also are going to specify back inside our project build.gradle, we are going to specify in the section where it tells you not to add dependencies. This is one of the few cases that we will actually add something in here, is we're going to add the stuff with the safe-args Gradle plugin. So safe-args with navigation, it's just a way of passing arguments between like fragments that you're transitioning to through different actions. So like, you know, from fragment A to fragment B, and you're passing something through with it. And then material is the other one we're going to include inside our app build.gradle. Okay. And once we've synced, we'll see some of our errors starting to disappear, but we'll work through all these other ones later. You see draw layout is no longer in red, for example, so that's a good start. And we will work through all those other errors in different parts. The next thing to just do back in main activity XML is make sure you've imported the correct app compat activity. We want the one from the Android X library, from the Jetpack stuff. Okay, so if you had imported the incorrect one, just go and change the import statement to use the Android X one. Okay, I'm just going to, I've got a bit of mess here in these imports at the moment. I'm just going to optimize these. Just so you know, Control-Alt-O in Android Studio will optimize your imports for you, so it's a useful thing to know. Okay, this is just an old package from a different project, so I'm just going to change this quickly, take this out. Okay, so now we have some red errors around our data binding stuff. So for example, there's no activity main binding, and we need to now actually deal with these by enabling data binding. Okay, so it's not very difficult to enable data binding. We'll do that in a moment by going to our build.gradle file inside of app, the app module, build.gradle file, and we just add this data binding enabled equals true, and then we're going to need to do another sync at that point to get everything back up to date. And now once you've done that, you can see this error around the import has disappeared, but activity main binding still shows as red. And now this is something you just need to know, is you can import this now, but before you could actually import it, you need to generate that file by building it. So that's what I did while this was paused. So you actually have to build the project, and then once you build the project, it generates this file for you. And that's why when I clicked on it, it went into activity main XML like that. It's not a file that it's not a class that I've created. It's not something you'll create. It's just something that you specify your bindings in your XML file, and then once you've done that, you build it. Thanks very much for watching, and please remember to keep watching the series, the Crash Course series, watch the next part, and so on and so forth. And also please subscribe to my channel.